I don't really know why I started coming here so often. The coffee's not even that good. Burnt sometimes. The chairs wobble if you sit too far back. But it's quiet. And I guess I like the quiet. Most mornings, it's just me and a few people with laptops, pretending to work. I sit by the window, stir my cup until the phone dies down, and watch the street. It's a
What are you
routine
reaching
that
for up
doesn't
there?
feel like one.
Just grabbing the
More
good
like
plates.
passing time
Tonight's
I don't know
special.
what else to do with. That morning, she walked in. It took me a second. I recognized her before I believed it was actually her. Ms. Avery. My high school English teacher. 10 years gone, maybe more. She looked the same, but not. Her hair was shorter, softer. A few lines at the corner of her mouth that hadn't been there before. Still, she carried herself the way she used to, like someone who wasn't afraid of silence. She ordered tea. Of course she did. She always had a thermos back then. Chamomile. I remembered that. Strange, the things you remember. She noticed me when she turned. Our eyes met, and I swear I almost forgot how to breathe. "Daniel?" she said. I nodded, my hand tightening around the handle of my mug. "Hey, wow. Hi." Her smile was small but real. She crossed the room and set her cup down at the table across from me. Not beside me, across. Just enough distance to make it feel deliberate. "It's been a while," she said. "Yeah," I answered. "Since, I guess, graduation. Longer than I want to count," she said, with that same dry humor she used in class. I laughed too quickly. My spoon rattled in the saucer. I picked it up just to have something to do with my hands. She folded her napkin neatly in half, then half again, as if time hadn't taught her to waste less. There wasn't much to say, and yet, there was. She asked about me. School. Work. I stumbled through answers. My voice always felt younger around her, like she had a way of making words matter. I caught myself staring at her hands more than once, long fingers around the cup, tapping lightly as she listened. And she listened. That was the dangerous part. Most people wait for their turn to speak. She stayed. Her eyes didn't flicker away when I faltered. She just let the silence hang until I found something worth saying. I remembered that too. At some point, she laughed, a quiet laugh, the kind that makes you want to say something funny again just to hear it. "You haven't changed much," she said. I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not. I shrugged. "You have." She tilted her head, curious, but didn't press. Instead, she just sipped her tea. The shop was emptying out. The light outside had shifted, hitting the glass at an angle that made her hair glow faintly at the edges. And for the first time that morning, I felt something press against me, not quite nostalgia, not quite longing. Something heavier. She checked her watch, then stood. "I should go." "Papers to grade," she said, almost like an old joke. I nodded, though I wanted to ask her to stay. She hesitated before leaving. One hand on her bag strap, her eyes flicking back toward me. Then, almost like an afterthought, she pulled her phone from her coat pocket. "Daniel," she said, "why don't you give me your number?" My heart stopped. I nodded too fast, fumbling with my pen and napkin, writing the digits down with a hand that wouldn't stay steady. She folded it once, just once this time, and slipped it into her pocket. "Good to see you again," she said softly. And then she was gone. I sat there long after the door closed, staring at the space she'd left behind. My coffee had gone cold. When my phone buzzed later, I didn't look at the screen right away. I just let it sit there, face down on the table, humming against the wood. But I already knew it was her. The text wasn't long. Just, "You free this weekend? Could use help carrying a few boxes." I stared at it until the screen went dark. Her number sitting there in my phone felt like some secret I wasn't sure I was supposed to have. By Saturday, I was standing outside her townhouse, palms damp despite the cold. She opened the door with that same soft smile, like she wasn't surprised I'd come at all. "Still polite," she said. "Right on time." Inside smelled faintly of old books and chamomile. Piles of boxes were stacked in the living room. Just cleaning out the study, she explained. Too many papers, not enough shelves. I carried the first box easily, but she insisted on helping. We ended up setting them down side by side, her sleeve brushing against mine as we lowered them. A small touch, nothing more, but it felt sharper than it should. We worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the scrape of cardboard and her quiet instructions. When we paused for tea, she poured mine without asking how I liked it. 2 sugars, no milk. Exactly the way I used to take it in her class, when I thought she didn't notice. I must have looked surprised because she said, "Something stick, Daniel." I laughed nervously, staring into the steam. "Guess I didn't think I was that memorable." "You were," she said simply. No smile, no hesitation. Just the truth. The words settled heavy between us. We sat on the couch with mugs in hand, the boxes forgotten. I wanted to ask her everything, about her life now, about whether she was lonely, about why she'd kept my number. But I didn't. Instead, I said the smallest thing I could manage. "I still have one of your books," I admitted. "Never returned it. The copy of Catcher in the Rye you lent me senior year." Her eyes softened. "You held on to it all this time?" "Yeah," I said, tracing the rim of my cup with a finger. "Guess it reminded me of something." "Of you?" "The way you made me feel like I had something worth saying." She didn't answer right away. She set her cup down, folded her hands together in her lap, then looked at me with that same stillness that had once terrified a classroom full of restless teenagers. "You were always too hard on yourself," she said finally. And I felt it again, that weight. The risk of it. She was mid-40s now, divorced, with a life already lived in ways I hadn't even begun. And me, barely out of school, stumbling my way through jobs, trying to seem steadier than I was. I imagined what people would say. What my parents would think. What her colleagues might whisper. The age gap stretched out like a warning sign between us. But then she laughed softly, pulling me back. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get heavy." "You weren't," I said quickly. I liked it." Her eyes flickered down, then back up. She reached for the sugar jar to refill her cup, but her hand brushed mine instead. Neither of us moved for a second. It was nothing, really. A small touch, like 100 others I'd had with strangers. But this one felt like a thread pulling tight, like a moment that could undo everything if we let it. She drew her hand back slowly, her expression unreadable. Then, after a pause, she gave the faintest smile. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. I thought later, replaying it in the quiet of my room. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It became a habit, me stopping by on Saturdays, helping with boxes, small repairs, errands she probably could have managed herself. She never asked outright. Just small invitations that made it feel casual. Like I was only passing through. One evening, she brewed tea while I fixed a crooked shelf in the study. Her sweater sleeves were rolled up, hair tied back loosely. I could smell chamomile before she even set the mugs down. "You make it look easy," she said, watching me adjust the shelf. "It's just a screwdriver," I said, but my voice caught. She leaned against the doorway, arms folded. The silence stretched. Not uncomfortable, but charged. I tightened one more screw just to have something in my hands. When I turned, she was still watching. Her gaze dropped, lingered at my jaw, then flicked away. "I should check on the kettle," she said, though the mugs were already on the table. We sat across from each other, as always. But closer this time, the edge of her knee brushing mine when she shifted. She didn't move away. Neither did I. She asked about my week. I told her too much, then stopped mid-sentence, realizing I was talking just to keep her listening. She didn't seem to mind. Then, her phone buzzed. Loud in the quiet room. She glanced at it, screen lighting her face. A pause. Then she set it down face down. But something had shifted. "Friend checking in?" I asked lightly. She hesitated. My sister. She worries. A small smile, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. The air went heavy. I sipped my tea, too hot, scalding my tongue. She noticed, reached for a napkin, but stopped halfway, hand hovering before pulling back. Daniel! She started, then shook her head. Never mind. What? Nothing. Forget it. But the words hung there, filling the space she left empty. We both laughed at nothing a minute later, too loud, like covering up something neither of us dared name. When it was time to go, I stood at the door longer than I should have. She followed, hand on the knob, but not turning it. Her face was close enough I could see the faint lines at the corner of her eyes. She looked at me, then down, then back again. For one suspended second, everything tilted. My breath caught hers too. If I leaned forward even an inch, but she turned the knob. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Good night, Daniel, she said softly. I nodded. My hands stayed at my sides, fists closed tight. Walking away, I could still feel the ghost of her knee against mine. The almost. The nearly. It was late afternoon when she asked if I wanted to walk. Nothing planned. Just the park a few blocks down. Leaves still clung to the trees, brittle and yellow, shivering with every gust. We didn't talk much at first. Our steps fell into rhythm, hers slower, more measured. I kept my hands in my pockets, watching the path instead of her face. After a while, she sat on a bench. I joined her, leaving just enough space so it wouldn't look like too much. You're quiet today, she said. I guess. I kicked at a stray leaf near my shoe. Just thinking. About? I almost said nothing. But the pause stretched, and it would have sounded like I was hiding. So I shrugged. You. Us. Her breath caught, barely audible. She looked out toward the pond instead of me. That's dangerous, she murmured. I swallowed. My pulse was loud in my ears. Why? Because of the age thing? Or because you were my teacher? She finished, her voice sharper than before. She pressed her lips together, then sighed. That was a long time ago. But it still matters, I said. She turned then, eyes narrowing slightly, as if studying me the way she used to study essays, searching for something between the lines. You don't know what you're doing, she said finally. Maybe not, I admitted. But I know how I feel when I'm around you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Not a declaration, not really. Just a crack in the wall I'd been holding up. Her fingers twisted the strap of her bag, winding and unwinding. Daniel! I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the gravel path. I hate it when you pull back like that. Like I'm just some kid you're humoring. You think that's what this is? I don't know. I laughed under my breath, shaky. Maybe. Some days it feels like it. And then other days, you look at me like. I stopped. Like what? She asked quietly. I couldn't answer. My mouth opened, then closed. My hands gripped tighter in my pockets. She exhaled slowly, eyes softening, but her body stayed angled away. A kind of shield. For a long while neither of us spoke. The sound of water lapping against the pond edge filled the space. A dog barked somewhere far off. Finally, she said, almost to herself, I don't know if I can afford to let someone see me like that again. Her voice was steady, but her hand trembled against the bench. I stared at it. Thought about covering it with mine. Didn't. The moment stretched, delicate as glass. If I reached out, even slightly, if I said one more word, it would change everything. Instead, I whispered, So what do we do now? The question hung there, unanswered. The next Saturday, I didn't hear from her. No text, no call. I told myself I'd wait, give her space. But the silence stretched too long, and by evening I found myself standing outside her townhouse anyway. Lights were on. Curtains drawn. A shadow moved across the window once, then disappeared. I raised my hand to knock, then lowered it. Instead, I walked home. The week after, she sent a short message. Busy. Another time. Nothing else. When we finally crossed paths again, it wasn't planned. I was at the grocery store, arms full of cheap cereal and coffee, when she turned the corner with a basket of fruit and wine. For a second, her face lit up. Then she hesitated. Daniel, she said, careful. Hey. She shifted the basket to her other arm. I didn't expect. She trailed off. We stood there between the aisles, two people pretending to browse. She picked up a pair she didn't need. I checked the label on a box I had no intention of buying. How have you been? I asked finally. Fine. Busy. My daughter was visiting. I blinked. She never mentioned a daughter. Older, from her first marriage. Studying overseas, she explained quickly, as if it were just a fact and not a revelation. I nodded, but something in me pulled tight. Not jealousy exactly, more like stepping onto a floor you didn't realize had cracks. Must have been nice, I said. It was. She gave a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. We parted a minute later, her basket still half full. No promises to meet, no casual invitation. Just a polite goodbye in the middle of the produce aisle. That night I typed out a message. I miss you. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I deleted it. Wrote another. Want to grab coffee tomorrow? Deleted that too. In the end, I set the phone face down, unanswered by my own hand. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The next morning, I went to the coffee shop. Sat by the window, same table. Ordered tea instead of coffee. Left the seat across from me empty. And waited, though I knew she wouldn't come. It was late when she finally called. Just my name, her voice low, asking if I could come by. I didn't ask why. I just went. She met me at the door in a cardigan, hair pulled back, no makeup. The living room was dim, only a lamp on. A half-empty mug sat on the table. Sorry for the hour, she said. It's fine. She motioned toward the kitchen. We ended up sitting there, opposite sides of the small table, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. For a while neither of us spoke. She traced the rim of her cup with one finger. I kept adjusting the chair, sliding it an inch, then another, like that would make the words easier. Finally she said, I shouldn't have pulled away like that. I swallowed. I thought maybe you changed your mind. About me. About this. Her eyes flicked up then away. I was scared. Of what? A pause. She gave a small laugh that wasn't really a laugh. Of how simple it feels when it shouldn't be. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. It doesn't feel simple to me. It feels like I'm waiting for you to tell me I'm imagining all of it. Her hand stilled. She looked at me then, really looked. You're not imagining it. The words landed heavy, not dramatic, just true. My chest tightened. I wanted to reach across, close the space between us. But I stayed where I was, gripping the edge of the table. She exhaled slowly. Daniel, if we cross this line, there's no going back. And I don't know if I can carry what comes with it. I know, I said quietly. But I'd rather risk it than keep pretending I don't. I stopped, biting down on the word. Love was too big, too loud. It didn't belong here. Her eyes softened anyway. She reached out, not all the way, just far enough that her hand rested near mine on the table. Close enough I could feel the warmth. Neither of us moved for a long moment. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, our breaths, everything louder than it should have been. Finally, she whispered, Okay. Just that. Nothing more. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. And in that tiny kitchen, with nothing but the lamp glow and 2 cooling mugs of tea, it felt like the whole world tilted. Time didn't change overnight. It never does. But slowly, the edges softened. Saturdays became routine again, not for boxes anymore, but for groceries, errands, little things that didn't matter except we did them together. Sometimes we still sat on the park bench, the one near the pond. She'd sip her chamomile, I'd drink my too bitter black coffee. We didn't always talk. We didn't need to. Once, she caught me glancing at her hand as it rested between us on the bench. Without a word, she turned her palm upward. I set mine there, quietly, like we'd been doing it forever. She still worried, sometimes. About the whispers, the gap in years, what people might say. But those worries didn't keep her from calling me at 8:47 a.m., the exact time she knew I'd just sat down at the cafe. It became our thing. Her voice instead of the burnt coffee. Life wasn't perfect. She still left mugs of tea half-finished on the counter, and I still sent texts I almost didn't send. But it was ours. And one evening, when we were clearing dishes in her kitchen, she brushed past me to grab a plate. Our shoulders touched, and she said, with that small, half-smile of hers, "Do you remember the shelf you fixed?" "Yeah. It still leans a little." I laughed, shaking my head. "Guess I'll have to keep coming back then." She didn't answer, just gave me that look, the one she used to give in class when she knew you understood something without her saying it. And I thought, this is it. Not perfect. Not simple. But enough. Only we would know what that meant.